Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, and I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is installation artist and disability advocate Alexis Neumann. Alexis is a Pacific Northwest installation artist using light, biomedical imagery, copper and iridescent, transparent and reflective materials to draw attention to the complexities of the human experience while engaging disability studies, intersectionality, theology, and cultural studies. She lives with multiple invisible illnesses, including Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and mental illness, and is currently based in Portland, Oregon. Her work focuses on and celebrates interconnectedness, intricacy, and balance within the body through her use of neural and biological systems, and explores resiliency and the metaphysical through sound, light, vibration, and materials.
Hi, my name is Alexis Neumann, and I am a guest host for Able Voices. I'm here with Torea Frey, and I am an artist and an educator and organizer living with disability. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, as well as POTS and mast cell activation disorder and a few other autoimmune conditions. And it has really impacted my life and how I have navigated creativity, especially how I got into art. My disability is central to my artwork as well as my community organizing and activism. And I have an MFA in visual art from the Pacific Northwest College of Art, as well as a master's in critical studies from PNCA as well. And I'm excited to introduce Torea. We actually met because we were in a show together about disability arts, and Torea was one of the other presenting artists. And could you explain a bit, or could you introduce yourself a bit and talk about your art practice, kind of how disability aligns with your practice?
Sure thing. And thank you for having me. I'm just pleased to be here talking with you today. My name is Torea Frey, and I'm a mixed media and collage artist based outside of Portland, Oregon. My story as an artist is a little unorthodox because it's more of my second career than my first. I was in corporate America for about 20 years working in the publishing field, but I ended up transitioning over to a career as an artist after disability came into my life. Although I too have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and a variety of comorbidities, I didn't consider myself disabled until roughly 2021. And I think that's really important context because it's that juncture, a large medical episode I had in 2021 that brought me to the world of art. Shall I? I can ramble on forever about this, but is it helpful?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I feel like it's interesting. I know your art background and how you got into art was really associated with your identity kind of shifting and disability being a part of your world. How did you navigate? What led you to doing the art that you do now?
Yes, that's a great question. And it really was a function of the way that my disability sort of came on. And I'll describe that a little bit more because that's crucial to the story.
Yes.
in 2021, in early 2021, I was having a very normal day with my family, and then all of a sudden I had the worst headache of my life, fell to the ground. I really couldn't walk or speak, and it looked a lot like a stroke. So off to the ER I went. They did the stroke protocol, and I wasn't having an actual stroke, but something funky was going on. So I ended up in a neuro unit for 3 days, I think, while they tried to figure stuff out. Couldn't walk, had a very, very difficult time communicating and understanding language. And ultimately, they didn't really find any source or cause for that. So they discharged me and said, here's a rolling walker, do some physical therapy, do some occupational therapy, and best of luck, which is a really, I mean, it's a tremendously unmooring shift, because I went one day from being very, very high functioning to being stuck in bed for an extended period of time, while I did some rehab and, improved my gait and did all sorts of small bits here and there. And it was that time in bed that kind of solidified art as the bridge to my new life and my new identity. There wasn't a ton that I could do in bed. I was still having a lot of sensitivity to light and sound, so I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't read, and I wanted to do something more enriching than staring at a wall. And for whatever reason, collage was the first thing I thought of. I always have kept an art journal, but it really became my refuge. During that time, I would just kind of sit on my bed, magazines all around me, pair of scissors, stick of glue, and I just started cutting and pasting in a really thoughtful way, trying to work out, how I got to the new me or what struggles I was going through. And the art became a really powerful healing tool for me in that moment. And also, even as I got past that more acute stage of being incapacitated and was able to get out into the world a little bit more, recover some abilities. I became so enmeshed in that daily practice, and the way it made my life demonstrably better in a manner that healthcare couldn't at that moment. It just became a lasting practice, and I got much more serious as time went on.
That's so interesting how you took like your publishing background and accessed these things that were obviously really important to you, images, words, media, and cut and paste them into a new artwork in itself.
It gave me this really powerful way to navigate a loss that I didn't otherwise have language for. Like, sometimes I would literally cut up a dictionary, rip it to shreds, and enraptured by what you said there. So thank you for making a light bulb go off.
Yeah. That loss of communication and isolation, I think, is unfortunately really common, especially with people with disabilities. And it's interesting how so many of us have found art as a way of expressing, our thoughts, and it's a great way to connect with our community. You are doing something right now that is connecting with other people in the disability community and involves this practice of cutting and pasting. Could you talk more about that, please?
Yeah. This is hands down the thing I'm most excited about for 2024. And it's a project that sprang out of a lot of the work I did last year and the disability arts show that we were in together, Alexis. So this new project came about when I had work up in a art space in Portland. A community member came in, she saw it and said, wow, this is great. Collage is really cool. And I may have a great idea for us because I have a daughter who's disabled, and she has created an artistic practice of ripping up paper, which is a great way for her to process her experience, but it has left this family with a whole bunch of ripped paper, and it could be put to much better use. So she got in contact with me and said, how about we collaborate? And so we're calling this project Let Her Rip. And I am connecting this disabled artist with the broader community of paper and collage artists in the Portland metro area. So what I've done is I've worked with my collaborating artist friend to get a whole bunch of ripped paper from her, just gallons and gallons and gallons of paper. And I'm taking that paper, sharing it with other collage artists in the Portland metro area, and then we'll put up a group show that centers the practice of the ripped paper artist. It'll show an installation of her doing her work, and it'll be juxtaposed against a diverse array of collage and mixed media art from a ton of the great paper artists of the Pacific Northwest. So it should be a really cool way to create a platform for an artist who might otherwise, be in isolation, not have a community around her. It gives her a new way of connecting with this broader community, and also gives her a voice in a way that she might not otherwise have. She doesn't have verbal speech. She communicates in other ways. So this is a really cool way to extend some of the work I started last year and continue participating and engaging with a community of people who are awesome, who might otherwise not have a platform. And it's just such a pleasure to be able to connect and build those deeper bonds within communities of all abilities.
That sounds so interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing the show. What is it about collage? I feel like this therapeutic experience of cutting and pasting and creating something new from something parallels the disability experience, and especially the disability experience of artists. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how you got into collage and how it aligns maybe with your identity of disability.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, what drew me to collage in the first place is this ability to edit the world in a way that I otherwise can't. It gives me agency that I don't always have access to otherwise. If I pick up a catalog for a furniture company, my house doesn't look like that, but I can take that sort of imagined landscape and insert what I want in there, or insert something that is a little more aligned with my experience, and create the world that I want to live in, which I think, is a bit of agency that disabled people don't always have. Maybe there aren't curb cuts. Maybe there's not a ramp to be able to get into the gallery itself. And I feel like collage creates this imaginative space that gives you an ability to imagine new futures, better futures, or, just something more in line with your own specific experience that can be really rich and deep and healing. And I'll say, within the collage community, I think there are a lot of people who experience disability or live with chronic illness or chronic pain. And one reason I think that is there just seem to be very low entry points for collage. You don't need much. You can use your junk mail and mix up your own glue with flour and water. If you can't use scissors, you can rip paper. There are all these beautiful ways of of interacting and plugging in with collage that not all mediums afford people.
That's a great point, especially being able to access it. I feel like there are a lot of art practices that are somewhat inaccessible. Well, not somewhat, very inaccessible. And I'm just navigating the art world as a disabled artist is very challenging at times to find art practices and communities that aren't focused on the more physical aspects of art making. Sometimes with art, it seems like the grander, the bigger, the more expensive things are, the more worthy they are. And I love that collage is one way that you can get really compelling messages across, and is such a creative way to communicate when just by using the tools around you. I know your arts education is a bit different, since you come from a background of publishing and being in corporate America, you may not have gone through the traditional route of a higher education and in the arts. And could you tell us a bit more about how you've educated your art or educated yourself within your art practice?
Yeah, of course. I would have loved to get an MFA, but it just wasn't on my radar. So I don't have any real formal training. I think I've only taken one studio art class in my entire life, but really how I learned many of the more like formal techniques and tools and disciplines of art was actually through my family. In my mom's side of my family, there are 4 generations of working artists. And I was extremely lucky to have grown up, learning under the tutelage of my grandmother, who was a painter in oils and acrylics, and one of my aunts, who is a watercolor and encaustic artist. And so during my childhood, things were a little rocky at home, and I'd get shipped down for most of the summer to spend time with my grandma, and she taught me all sorts of different things: how to sew, how to embroider, how to cook, how to do some light woodworking, how to make pine needle baskets. And then later, as I grew more, she taught me more technical aspects of drawing, pastels, acrylics, all sorts of different mediums. So my arts education was really just being taken under the wing of family members and absorbing everything like a sponge. Then, going out and just getting my hands dirty, making a bunch of mistakes, doing really stupid juvenile art and improving. These days, I think I'm looking more into taking classes in the community for new skills I want to pick up just from local artists I know and love. And then otherwise just going to as many spaces where there's art and spending time in them, going to museums or galleries, or even just walking or rolling on city streets to look at big murals and street art and kind of critically interrogate each of those pieces and see what I can take from them, what I like about them, what I can learn from them, and what I can discard. So it's more about like internal curiosity and this passion for making than a formal education, but I think both are valid and wonderful.
Yeah, I think that is, there are so many amazing resources in the community for learning, and having the opportunity to learn one-on-one with people can be so transformative. I'm curious, what advice would you give to a young artist with a disability moving forward?
Yeah, I love that question because it's something that, I don't think I necessarily benefited from. You don't always feel like there's someone looking out for you or telling you to like for me, the biggest piece of advice I could give, or that I wanted to hear as a artist with a disability, is just honor yourself and be true to what you need. You know you better than anyone else knows you. Like, listen to your body, be gentle with yourself. There will be times when you have to say no to really great opportunities because of a limitation you have, or the space isn't accessible, or any of those myriad other reasons. But trust in your talent and your abilities, and have faith that better opportunities will present themselves. And then just be transparent with people. Be honest about what works for you and what doesn't. Communicate what you need, and engage. Participate actively, so that people have to make space for you. That feels kind of icky sometimes. I'm not saying that anyone isn't trying hard enough. Like, disabled people are trying their darn hardest and advocating for themselves immensely. But like, put time and effort into those communities that reward you and make you feel dignified and like a whole person within them.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I have loved working with you, and you're an artist who I deeply respect. And is there anything else that you would like to leave with the listeners of Able Voices?
No, I mean, apart from thanking you for your time and the platform for existing, it's a tremendous resource, and I hope there are more efforts like this down the line, because we all benefit when everyone is truly reflected in the world landscape.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Able Voices is a production of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berklee.edu/BIAAE, or email us at BIAAE@Berklee, that's LEE.edu.